Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Rob Edwards and today is New Book Day. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are releasing as of the 12th of July 2019, the book Tales of Magic and Destiny, a new anthology from Inklings Press featuring 12 stories of fantasy. This is the Kindle version, obviously. The paperback version will take a while to reach me here in Finland, but I wanted to make this video today on release day. 12 new stories in there, and I want to do a very quick rundown of what we have. We have Stars Above, Shadows Beneath by Maria Haskins, a great writer. She's been featured in Inklings before. She first appeared in Tales from Alternate Earths, a dark fantasy here about a pirate returning to her home village and the emotional impact that she goes through because of that. We have The Rogue of Avarath by Tom Jolly, a fun, if slightly dark, fantasy heist where a rogue is trying to steal something from the local ruler. There's a puzzle to solve and all sorts of ramifications. A really interesting, fun story, that one. Chanter by Tara E. Wood is a story about an apprentice wizard trying to get to the advanced course of their university. Their final exams coming up, but they have a big problem that they need to solve, and they go about it in a unique, strange, and quite funny way. It's not a comedy, but it is quite a light-hearted fantasy romp, and I really enjoy it. Next up we have Virtue's Blade by Me. It's set in the Westhaven University. If you've listened to my podcast, you might have heard other stories from that universe, but this is a brand new story with brand new characters, and a man is dealing with a cursed sword, essentially. Then we have Fortified by Hall Jameson. Hall's story is perhaps I don't want to say exception, because it is definitely a fantasy story, but it's a modern day fantasy. It is not quite urban fantasy, but it is a story about the modern world where fantasy elements impinge upon it. But it's a really interesting study about loss and dealing with loss that I think people are really going to take to. If you want some really classic epic fantasy, we've got you covered on that as well, with Wolf Scout by Jeanette O'Hagan. A really, really nice story about princesses and rough and tumble ranger types and shapeshifters and all sorts of fun stuff go in there. And it's a really classic fantasy yarn. We then have a story by Leo McBride, our stalwart editor here at Inklings Press. It is a great story of his, as they all are. Out of the Dust by Leo McBride is a story about a very unique civilization, a village trapped on the edge of a vast wasteland, having to deal with a big monster attack. And it's a sort of classic fantasy story in that regard. A Sword of Bone by Aaron Amell is a story set against a backdrop of war. More swords of magical nature in this one, and he has to steer a line between the different parties involved in this war to try and keep an artifact out of the wrong hands. We then have a really interesting story by Kerry Buchanan, which is a retelling of the legend of the Lambton Worm, called The Fearsome Lambton Worm. I love this story. It is it's so arch. It's really kind of told from a very kind of fairy tale kind of view. Very kind of I'm not a big fan generally of third-person omniscient stories, but this is one, and it handles it really well. And when you do have a story which handles it really well, then you get something as good as this. Brendan Harris up next with his story, The Heroine's Journey, a story about an unlikely hero who has survived a battle where the likely hero has died, and how she deals with that, and how does she even want to become a hero in her hero's place. We then have a quirky, delightful Just kind of wacky comedy story. It's Always Sunny at the Fortress of Bones. A sorceress is guarding a dungeon, and adventurers are keep breaking into it, and she has to deal with them. And it's it's brilliant. It's by Gilletta Clegg, again a previous contributor for Inklings, and it's a really funny, slightly quirky story. And we round up the anthology by Ashura's Pilgrimage by Ricardo Victoria. Ricardo Victoria. He has his own first novel, his debut novel, is coming out in August, and this story is set in the same universe and deals with some background that didn't make it into the novel, and lets you get a feel for his world before Tempest Blades, The Withered King, arrives in August. So it's well worth checking out in preparation for that. So that's a rundown of what we have in the anthology, and I thought what I might do, just to round out the video, how are we doing for time? Yeah, well, just to round out the video, is I might just read the first page or two of my story, Virtue's Blade. So I'm going to let me open that in the Kindle, there we go, and here we go, Virtue's Blade by me, Rob Edwards. When the moment came, he ran. He ran, leaving his meagre possessions behind. He doubted he would see them again. He ran across the village green, out past the blacksmith's forge, and on through the fields. He ran until the irritation of the pebble in his boot became a searing pain, ran until his boot filled with foul-smelling fluid, until the sharp pain faded to a dull nothingness, each impact like slapping meat on a counter. He crossed hills, forded streams, plunged into a forest. He didn't pause for food, or drink, or sleep. Pushing through the undergrowth, tore at his bare hands. Low-hanging branches slapped him in the face. He had no choice but to run. Night followed day, followed night. His mind passed away into something less than wakeful, even as what was left of his feet kept their pace. When he was shocked to consciousness once more, sunlight filtered through the trees again. And through it all, the thrum of that will, driving him on, on, on. He had no sense of what he was being driven to, or how much of the journey remained. Only the direction, only the need for him, Saberlard, to be there on time. He crashed through thick ferns, cloak snagged on brambles as he passed, and the compulsion vanished. Before him, 3 Osaran lizard warriors surrounded a tree. They jabbed their spears upwards towards a young woman just beyond their reach. She clung to a branch that bent under her weight. The Osarans could climb up to fetch her, but they had no need. Time would bring her to them. Now, Saberlard. The voice was in his head. The sword was in his hand. He accelerated, plunged the blade deep into the heart of the first lizard. It died before it could even express surprise. Saberlard used the impact to slow his charge, pushed his shoulder against the lizard's chest, withdrew his blade and spun away. The remaining lizards shifted their spear points from the woman to him. The next kill would not be so easy. The pair lunged simultaneously, one high, one low. Saberlard parried the lower thrust, ducked under the higher. He stepped in, but the lizards worked their shields close together, leaving no gap to exploit. He swatted the shields in frustration, but staggered back and away. The 2 spear tips jabbed, alternating between striking together and separately. What he couldn't dodge, he beat away with heavy parries, but he saw no opening for attack. The 2 lizards were trained to fight together, and trained well. They had size, reach, and strength over him. This wasn't a fight he could win, unless he could find a way to shift the balance. When next he parried, his back hand brushed against ferns, the clearing edge. Retreating into the undergrowth would be death. Spear tips were less hindered than sword swings in that terrain, and tip beat edge at the best of times. Instead, on the next parry, Saberlard ducked right, risking a spear in the back to dash 5 paces along the fern line to a gnarled old tree, then stepped behind its trunk. The lizards followed, hissing warnings to each other in their strange Osaran language. They had 2 choices now: pincer him around the tree or stay together, pivoting to try and keep their formation. They chose the latter. one lizard cleaving hard to the tree, the other swinging wider around. Their form was almost perfect. Sablard buried his sword in that almost. Sablard had the momentum now. The next time the final lizard jabbed low, he stepped on the spear point and carved around the Asaran shield. The lizard fell and took Sablard's energy with it. He sagged against the tree, only muscle memory letting him sheathe his sword on the first attempt. 2 days of exhaustion dumped into his system. His thoughts scattered, his knees bent. "There might be more," he croaked through gritted teeth. The thought straightened his spine a little. "A timely rescue, Sir Knight," the woman said, climbing down from her tree. "There might be more," Sablard said. "Oh, I don't think so. I only saw the 3 of them chasing me." "There might be more." "Calm yourself, Sir Brave Knight. Your prowess has carried the day. I'm sure we're perfectly safe now." "For the sake of your ancestors," Sablard said, his tongue struggling to sound the words. "Don't say." But it was too late. Darkness descended. And there we go, there's the opening of Virtue's Blade by me. It's in Tales of Magic and Destiny, 12 Tales of Fantasy, available on Amazon right now in both Kindle and paperback format. I'll put a link in the description down below that will get you to your local Amazon to order it from there if you want a copy. I do recommend it to you. Inklings books, I have to say, I know I would say this because, I'm with Inklings, but each new book gets better and better, and this latest one, I really think it's a solid contribution to the Inklings oeuvre, as it were. So do check it out. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you want to check out any more videos from me, you can see more about me and my writing by clicking the box over there. And you can see more about me and geeky stuff generally by clicking the box there. Thanks for watching. Cheers.